morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this will be a really special event for everybody here. We're delighted to have so many of you here, and can I just say a huge thank you to all of our candidates who have joined us today, and of course to Mark Owen, who is chairing the event. So thank you to everybody. Just a few housekeeping rules. Just so you know, we aren't expecting a fire alarm today, so if there is a fire alarm, please follow the safety procedures which we'll outline at the time. The fire exits are just down there and the exit just there, okay? Toilets, if you can use that door at the end, we can avoid using this door just for health and safety. Please use that door there. Just so you know, when you do ask a question, if you can please come up and ask your question, just say your name and introduce yourself to the candidates, and then we can carry on with the questions as you go. Just one other thing, we've got a speech-to-text operator today. We're delighted to have Hilary with us. We just wanted to make sure that Hilary obviously gets a break during the proceedings. So just bear with us. It may be, we've got the hearing, we've got the microphone, so hopefully that will accommodate you during that break. But it may just be that we have to take Hilary's lead and offer that 5-minute break as we go through. So just bear with us at that point, okay? One other thing, we have had a slight technical hitch with our microphones this morning. We're keeping everything crossed that it won't happen again. But again, if it does, just bear with us. And candidates, if it does happen, if you could just carry on, but just raise your voices a little bit, that would be brilliant. Thank you. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Mark, who will lead the proceedings, and have a wonderful morning. And we hope we can all get something out of this, okay? So thank you very much. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you ever so much for coming out on such a beautiful day. And this is such an interesting election, and we're blessed with some fantastic and interesting candidates here in Gloucester as well. It's never been such a tightly fought seat. We're going to keep it really tight. There were seven candidates, so we're going to have to try and get through your questions quite quickly. If at the end you've got some sort of follow-up or anything else, you can come back over to me as well, okay? We'll try and follow that up for you. Okay, each candidate will have 3 minutes with an opening statement, okay? And we're going to start with Richard Graham. So Richard, 3 minutes, sir. If you keep it tight, that'd be fantastic.
Where's Gemma?
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a big thank you to the Gloucestershire Deaf Association for hosting the event, and a big thank you for all of you coming. I know it isn't easy for all of you to travel around. 5 years ago, we had the first ever hustings here at the Deaf Association, and it's great that we're back again today to have another hustings, so you can see what we all look like and what we have to say. 5 years ago, you gave me the chance to represent our city, and there were 3 things that I promised. Number 1, jobs, especially for the young, and including those with disabilities. Number 2, regeneration across all the city. And number 3, protecting frontline health services. Today, Gloucester is in a different place from 5 years ago. Then, our manufacturing was on its back. Our employment had suffered hugely, and we had the second worst performing secondary school in the country. Today, unemployment has halved. Apprenticeships have more than doubled, and youth unemployment is hugely better. Regeneration, investment, and new businesses setting up in our city are at record highs. And the school that was performing badly is now almost 4 times better results. On the disabilities side, I was delighted to hold one of my 11 jobs fairs here in the Deaf Association. And I was delighted to hold the first ever Disability Confident event organised by an MP in the heart of our city last year. We are making huge strides to try and help people with disabilities into jobs. And the Minister for the Disabled, of course, is here in the Forest of Dean. Last year, 400 people with disabilities every day found new jobs. And this, for me, is incredibly important. It's about seeing the ability, not the disability. So I'm standing again to ask for your support to try and help keep the progress that we've made in Gloucester going. Help the regeneration, help more people into jobs, help make sure that those who are weak or disabled get the help they deserve. And me and my office have handled over 11,000 cases of constituents with problems. People trying to make sure they get the right personal independence payment, people who are waiting too long for their health assessments, all those difficulties. But overall, I believe that our city is on the up, and we should keep it that way. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard. Our next candidate is Jonathan Ingleby. Ingleby, I'm very sorry, from the Green Party.
Stand up to it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your invitation. I've got to get going as I've only got 3 minutes, so here goes. I want to speak about the wider picture, just briefly. I've heard what Richard has said about Gloucester, and what he says is true and interesting, but actually the waters which flow down to Gloucester flow from somewhere else. They flow from Westminster. And I think it's really necessary that we look at the bigger picture this morning. For too long, in fact, our politics have been the same old politics. We've been dancing with Tina. Tina, there is no alternative. And what the Green Party is trying to do is to bring something radically new into the situation. Please read our manifesto. It is new and very interesting from that point of view. And the point about the Green Party is that it is not politics for the few, but politics for everyone. Our strapline is for the common good, for the common good. And that means that government is conducted with the needs of every community in mind, including, of course, this community here, which has organised this event. But here's the hard bit. Government for the common good is expensive. We have to pay for it. And in fact, at the moment, we are ruled by a small, wealthy, powerful elite who are organising government for their own good rather than for the common good, and are not prepared to pay for the many things that we need. We need to provide everyone with a good education. We need a good health service. We need that there is affordable housing. We need a good legal system. Not to mention care for people who are disadvantaged. And none of these things, I have to agree, come cheap. But here is what I have to say about that. In order to pay for all these things, we need a different economy. In particular, a different taxation system. Now, I won't go into details now. You could read it in our manifesto if you're interested. I have the details with me if anybody wants to ask a question about them. But in essence, we need to tax wealth adequately. We are an immensely wealthy nation. We are the 6th most wealthy nation in the world. And yet, the politics which we have do not allow for an adequate distribution of that wealth. What we need is to make sure that that wealth is shared. People talk a lot about growth. Actually, what they ought to be talking about is distribution. How the wealth that we have is fairly distributed. That's a big subject, and I hope we're going to talk about it more. One last thought. Government is for the common good, and that includes action on climate change. Now, you would expect me to say that because I'm from the Green Party. This is a big one. Climate change will, I promise you, be the one great political, last sentence, one great political and economic fact that will affect us all in the near future. And we're not talking enough about it. Thank you.
Okay. Next in line is Sophie Gardner from the Labour Party.
Thanks, Mark. It's lovely to be here. Thank you very much, and hello. My name is Sophie Gardner, and I'm standing in Gloucester for the Labour Party. 5 years ago, at the time of the last general election, I wasn't involved in politics. I'd served in the RAF for 19 years, during which time I was promoted at the earliest opportunity at every rank. I left as a wing commander. I now run a small business working with veterans and charities, so I work with quite a lot of people, both young and old, with hearing loss, and I live in the heart of the city. I've been listening to what people want from their MP since I was selected as a candidate 2 years ago. I've knocked on doors, I've campaigned with charities, volunteered regularly in our community, and shown that I'm tough, hard-working, and committed to Gloucester. I've spoken out on issues as diverse as mental health and military intervention. I want to represent the people of our city because I care passionately about the big issues of the day, like the NHS and the cost of living, and I'm deeply committed to establishing a fairer Britain. Many people talk about the future for Gloucester. They want me to make faster progress on regeneration, to campaign for better transport and infrastructure, to support our educational establishments, which are struggling to provide the education they want to under the current fragmented organisation, and tackle the demand for housing. They want better quality and better paid jobs. What they don't want rash commitments, and unlike this government, not to pander to the loudest voices or to turn one section of society against the other, the old against the young, the sick against the healthy, the British citizen against the newcomer. I worry that power and wealth is becoming increasingly concentrated in the hands of those at the top, when a country as rich and vibrant as ours should be about building a better future for everyone. That's something I've always believed in, but I felt I had to get involved when I saw what was happening after the last general election in 2010. I don't think we can afford to wait another 5 years to make the change for a better future. So I'm standing as your candidate because I want a fairer future. I'll use my experience, knowledge, leadership and determination, and almost 2 decades of public service to serve you if you elect me as your Member of Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie. Our next candidate is Richard Ford from the UKIP party.
Thank you. There's not a great deal of... Well, hi everyone, my name is Richard Ford, I'm from UKIP. UKIP you've probably heard of, I'm sure. We won the European election in Gloucester last year. We're winning the Citizen Online poll at the moment in Gloucester. We're the only major party standing in this election that has a chance of winning. You've basically got a choice between me and the Lib Lab Con, which is either Tory full strength or Tory light with the Lib Dems and with the Labour Party. We're also the only party that have got a credible, costed solution for funding the National Health Service. The Tories are now apparently the party of the workers. They say they're going to fund the NHS with £8 billion. Labour's got a similar promise, but neither have said how they're going to do it. Sorry. So I get a bit passionate and enthusiastic about things. As I was saying, we're the only party who got a credible, costed solution for our NHS, for Gloucester Royal and for the NHS and the rest of the country. We've got a clear costed commitment for £3 billion to go into the National Health Service. There'll be no more stealth reductions within the NHS and within provision for deaf people, as has been the case with the DWP, William Duncan Smith and the Tory Lib Dem coalition. What we want to do here in Gloucester, having won the European election on the last occasion, is a marginal seat, a clear choice. Do you want to have just another Conservative MP to add to the 250 or 300 Conservative MPs, just another Labour MP to add to the 250, 300 Labour MPs? With me, a clear alternative, a clear chance, a clear opportunity. The only alternatives here are with me, with the Greens, or with Tusk, or with George. I'm the only one who can make a difference for Gloucester in this marginal seat. And what I'd like to say as well is, what a wonderful contribution deaf people have made. I'm old enough to remember Jack Ashley, the Labour MP from Stoke-on-Trent, how well he did as a Member of Parliament 40 years ago, when really there weren't the facilities there are today. Ludwig van Beethoven, he was deaf, wasn't he? Pete Townsend. Look at the contributions deaf people have made. I value that, want to represent you, and I appreciate your support very much indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. We're just going to ask candidates just to slow it down a little bit, please. Okay. That'd be really beneficial for. It's okay. No worries. Next candidate is Jeremy Hilton.
Good morning. It's great to be back here. I was here 5 years ago debating with Richard. We're the only two candidates that are back again fighting the Gloucester seat. The reasons why I'm fighting Gloucester seat is, of course, I'm a local man. I was born and bred in Gloucester, and I've lived within and worked within 10 miles of the cathedral all my life. So my heart is in Gloucester, and I'd love to be the MP for this city to represent our city in the House of Commons and argue for the best services we can possibly get for Gloucester. I've been a councillor for 23 years, so I've given public service longer than any of the candidates sitting around this table this morning to the Gloucester City. I'm on the County Council, I'm also on Gloucester City Council, so I have a great understanding about the needs of Gloucester. I also know that councillors do a lot for regeneration of this city as well. It's not just the MP. And the MP is there to assist the council in finding the funding that we need from government and to work closely with the council. I work closely with my colleagues, both in the Labour Party and the Conservative Party on the council, and I think that's important. If we want the best for the city, the next MP must work with local members from all parties. Yesterday, Nick Clegg launched the Liberal Democrat Manifesto. There's 5 key pledges on the front page. These are negotiating points which we want to deliver in the next government. I think we need to understand that we need to bring, as he said, a heart to a Conservative-led government or brain to a Labour-led one. What we need to make sure is we have a strong economy and a fair society. We will certainly cut less than the Conservatives, and we will make sure that we don't borrow as much as Labour would do. Balancing the economy. So we want to balance the budget by 2018, guarantee education funding from nursery to the age of 19 to college, make sure that's maintained. We want to increase the income tax threshold to £12,500. Let's make that quite clear. That is an initiative put to this country in 2010 by the Liberal Democrats and has been delivered, and now every other party wants to jump on our bandwagon. But if you want to deliver that, you do need to vote Liberal Democrat to be guaranteed that it will be taken up to £12,500. We also want to protect the environment, and we'll pass 5 green laws. Interestingly, for every child that will be born in the UK over the next 5 years, we will plant 1 single tree around the country in order to help protect our environment. And finally, I'm speaking slowly. That's why I'm overrunning a bit. Finally, we guarantee £8 billion extra spending on the NHS by the end of this next Parliament. It's been fully costed and it can be delivered. Thank you.
Jeremy. Next candidate is George Budgeon from the Raving Looney Party.
Hello. Excuse me for not standing up. I was disabled as a fireman in November the 16th, 1981 in London Road, Gloucester. So have much empathy with now all disabilities. Now 71, I am awaiting a hearing aid because my carer complains I've got the television up too loud when I go to bed at night. I've met and learnt a lot about the deaf since the Disability Equality Forum, meeting a very nice gentleman called Ken from the Forest of Dean, and I was very interested in the fire alarms for flashing and vibrating, which as a fireman I got great interest in. Although I'm standing for the Monster Raving Looney Party, I am trying to bring some fun to a very serious and important election, and by making a fool of myself and bringing some fun, hoping it may encourage all disabled people that they do not have to sit in their house, they can be part of society and enjoy it to the full. I want you, if you know of anybody who says I am not going to vote, it's not worth it, I will give £1,000, my £500 deposit, and William Hill said they will match that if I get 5%, so that will be mixed between charities like cancer, meningitis, children's, and perhaps homeless. I've been fighting the loony ideas for the City Council for over 30 years since becoming involved with Access and the late Bill Phillips. I congratulate Richard for running the jobs fair, but when I turned up at the Blackfriars Centre, there was a step in. If I had not had a carer, I could not have got in. This is what I'm trying to highlight. When an alteration is made by a government or city department, alter things for the disabled, then some of the loony ideas closing all public toilets in the city because of cost, yet building a rusty structure in the docks calling it art at over £100,000. Pedestrianising the centre of Gloucester to keep traffic and pedestrians apart, yet they make Kimbro's Way open space so the visually impaired and obviously the deaf with no flashing signs or anything like that to cross the road. So I'm still carrying on with that, and I'm hoping by spending my £500, the successful candidate for Gloucester, if it's not me, will take this on board. If we are £150 billion in debt, how can we be the sixth richest country in the world? I fear, having grown up as a war baby, I still don't throw things away. I'm using old paper. Perhaps I should stand for the Green Party.
George.
I cannot. I finished with, I want to keep the 99p coin and give a penny to charity, extra points for taxpayers, and cut wages and prices by 50%, so we'll only be half as poor as we were before the election.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Sue Powell from TUSC. Is that right?
Yes, Tusk.
And I believe you got a bad back, so do you
Yes, I
want to...
have. I'm going to sit in solidarity with George. Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, you probably won't have heard of it. It's relatively new, set up in 2010 by the Railway Workers Union leader Bob Crow and a collection of trade unionists, anti-cuts campaigners, NHS activists and socialists. Sophie was talking about new ideas and not being in politics very long. I've been in politics for 50 years. I started as a child, school kid really, incensed by the Vietnam War and by the injustices that I saw. And like a lot of people in my generation, I embraced the ideas of socialism. Not the socialism that we saw in Russia and those kind of places, That's the kind of socialism I've always disliked. But I think ordinary working people need representation, and for me, that is a socialist alternative that we put forward. We have councillors, former Labour councillors, who've joined our group, and they have always voted against cuts. We're resolutely against privatisation. I've cheated a bit by putting one of my policies on my T-shirt today. Next time I'm going to come with the entire programme because it's quicker. But we are also fighting for minimum wage, and we'd like to point out that what politicians say before an election is not as important as what they do when they're in office. And what's happened with disabled people is that the wage gap between able people and people with disabilities has doubled since 2010. If you look at the DWP figures for disabled people in employment, it's risen, it rose in 2014 by 250,000. But what they don't tell you is that twice as many were made unemployed in the period when in the first years of this government. We all know how difficult it is to get decent work, decently paid jobs. And we also know that the cuts have affected everyone, but in particular, I'd say, the disabled. And I think one of the things we've all been speaking rather quickly, we always think we have a lot to tell people. One of the most important things we should do is actually to listen. I found just from the questions that there were certain things that I was ignorant of. But one of the things that Tusk is campaigning for, we are a grassroots movement. We want people to get involved. We produced a leaflet at the start of our campaign appealing to anyone who felt that they wanted to oppose cuts and privatisation to stand as candidates. We are growing. We've got 137 parliamentary candidates in this election. We're standing in 30% of the council seats in Wales, over 20% in England and 15% in Scotland, although we only launched Tusk just after the Scottish referendum. That's why I'm really delighted to speak to you today. I want to learn from you, and I can assure you that we will campaign and we will fight cuts and austerity and the things that affect people in society, in particular people with disabilities.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're just going to take a very, very quick breather in order for the two very hard-working interpreters to just have a little rest. Okay, I think they've done a fantastic job so far. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, excuse me. Okay, now we come to the very, very interesting bit, if you ask me. We have questions from the floor that all the candidates have seen in advance, and we will give everybody the opportunity to answer the questions. I'm going to ask them all to try and keep it brief, as we try to get through as many of these questions as we possibly can in the hour that we have left. So to start with, I'd like to ask Patrick Bryan to come to the floor, please, and ask the first question. Thank you, Patrick.
Hi everybody.
Patrick.
I'm Patrick.
Good.
Now I've heard that the government do benefit cuts. Certainly in the future, how does it impact young people that maybe haven't worked for a long period of time? And how are your parties going to support these?
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with Jeremy on the left-hand side, and we'll pass the microphone along from each candidate. Thank you. So to start, Jeremy. The question was funding cuts.
Yeah, I think from the announcement in our manifesto yesterday, we made it quite clear that we're not going to cut as much as the budget in order to deal with the deficit as the Conservatives. They're planning on £12 billion, and we're planning on £3 billion. But when we're looking at benefits for people with disabilities, that the benefits will be frozen for most people at a 1% increase every year. But that won't be the case for those that have a disability, and the reason why they're getting that funding is because of that disability. So it should, I assume, and I haven't read the manifesto in full because it came out last night and it's got 158 pages, though I read the pre-manifesto. It should help protect those people that suffer from a hearing issue and are receiving benefits because of that.
Thank you. Yes, this government has introduced £21 billion of benefits cuts in 2010 to 2015, and we plan 12 billion 2015 to 2020. To give you an example, the first thing we would do is reduce the benefit cap per family, which does not include people with disabilities, from £26,000 a year to £23,000 a year. That is more after tax than the average person working in Gloucester gets. And that money that we will save will be invested in another 1 million apprenticeships across the country. So last time we had 2 million apprenticeships. This time we would, if re-elected, have 3 million. And that means, in answer to your question about young people, that the opportunities for young people to get into earning and learning and be on a ladder for a successful life will be increased. Over the last 5 years, as I mentioned, we've had 6,000 new apprentices in Gloucester, and many of those are from families of 2 and in some cases 3 generations of not working at all. So I think this help for getting young people into work is one of the most important things that we can do, and making sure that families without work don't earn more than people in work is one of the basic premises of a fair society. So I hope that gives a small answer to what is a big question. But I can promise you that we will not be affecting people with disabilities and who are receiving the personal independence payment. That any sort of scaremongering on that, please disregard it. Thank you.
I've already said that I'm absolutely against cuts to benefits. I think there's this myth of generations of people who've never worked really should be laid to rest. The figures show that there's a very tiny minority of people who go from one generation to the other without working. And the fact is, they are being used as an excuse to penalise everyone that's on benefits. Most of the people that receive benefits in this country at the moment are actually in some form of employment. Low wages cause people to claim housing benefit. If wages were to be increased, then they wouldn't need those benefits, and that money could be used elsewhere. That would also represent a cut in the benefits budget. The fact is, disabled people have suffered under this government so far. The fact that BSL interpreters, for example, the funding for them has been cut in many cases. That is a great impediment for people getting back into work or playing any kind of role in society. I lived in Germany for a long time, and I have to say that one of the things that struck me when I first went there was that you actually see far more people with disabilities out and about doing things and playing part in everyday activities. And I think that's because there's more funding for those kind of things in Germany. And one of the reasons for that is because the trade union movement is inordinately stronger than it is here, and has fought for those things and will not allow benefits to be cut in quite the same way as they have been in this country, not only under this government, but under the previous government. I think there's over 1,000 cases of people who have died having been declared fit for work whose cases are being investigated currently. We know of lots of people who have committed suicide out of desperation over bedroom tax and their inability to pay maybe fuel or pay for food. So I think we really have to say this whole discussion about cuts is farcical when £120 billion in unpaid taxes get lost to this country every year.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know. Would you prefer me to stand or sit, given that there is fine standing? Okay. I just wanted. Well, I'd already mentioned about the fact that I want our society to be fairer, and what we've seen this government do is reduce taxes on those who earn the most, over £150,000 a year, while attacking people who are the worse off, and I think that's wrong. I also think the way that people who need benefits have been stigmatised is wrong, and I received, maybe some of you did, the taxpayer-funded letter from George Osborne telling us what our taxes are spent on, with welfare all lumped together, not explaining that there's very many different bits of that, so that it looked and came across as the biggest amount of our taxes without explaining the detail behind it. And I think that's designed to make people resent money spent on benefits. I volunteer at the food bank here in the city, not this month, they've given me this month off, but I have been before on a regular basis. And a lot of people that come in are people that are suffering delays because either their benefits have been stopped or they're on the transfer between DLA and PIP. And these are people that are so desperate they're having to come to get food from us. Again, I think that is wrong. One thing I'd like to say is that the Labour Party will get a grip of that transfer between DLA and PIP. It's not working properly, and that is just that is cruel to people. And the other thing I'd like to mention, because Richard Graham talked about the basic premises of a fair society. We said we won't increase VAT. I know it's not about benefits, but the point is if VAT goes up and the Conservatives haven't yet promised that they won't raise VAT, that will always disproportionately affect those on the lowest incomes. Thank you.
Was it? Definitely. Prime Minister's question.
I'll let Richard give an answer to that very quickly.
Well, just to confirm that the Prime Minister said, at Prime Minister's questions to Ed Miliband, that we would not, repeat, not be raising VAT. We have to be very careful about scaremongering in
You said
election.
that last time as well.
I would just like to add that the Conservatives said last time they wouldn't raise VAT, and they did.
Okay. We'll pass it over. Same question. Thank you.
I'm not going to speak at length on this because I agree with my co-candidates from TUSK and from the Labour Party. I think that the whole policy of what generally could be called austerity is wrong. I think it's poor economics. You can see this Europe-wide now. You can see that in a country like Greece, they're desperate because of austerity being imposed on them over years, and yet they're still not able to repay their debts. It's a poor economic model, austerity. And secondly, and this is the same thing, austerity has fallen on the wrong people. There are people who want to be paying more tax and contributing more to our society, but they're not doing it. And so I would be totally against any reduction in benefits, and the Green Party, that's our policy.
Nine months ago, I went to Parliament to fight on an access issue, and I had found out all the MPs had had an expenses rise within 9 months of the election because they could not manage. As a fireman, one of the worst times in my life was the 1977 strike. But when, after we came out on strike, I found somebody on benefit was earning more money than I was when I was working. made me feel a little better. It was still a very bad time. I think there's two sorts of benefit for people with a disability and benefit for people who are not working or choose not to work, and what we must do is find those who cheat. Regularly we see on news that somebody claims disability and is in the hundreds, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands of pounds over years, and it brings a stigma on those of us who have a disability. I sometimes feel guilty because obviously I have a fire service pension and industrial injury. That is why I've never claimed on any of my work fighting access for disabled people and did it all at my own expense. We must have a fair society, and I did agree that if somebody is earning more in benefits than somebody working, then perhaps that should be cut to stop encouraging those people to live on a benefit system. But we don't know the numbers because strategics are used by both parties. But we must have a fair society, pay those that have a disability or need, and not those who would prefer to claim benefit than work.
Okay.
Thank you.
George, okay, just one second.
Just
Look, why are we attacking the so-called benefit cheats? It's a nonsense. They are an absolute minute part of the whole system. The tax dodgers at the top of the system, the wealthy, are costing us at the very minimum 25 times more in lost revenue than these so-called benefit cheats. Just leave them alone.
Can I just answer that? I'm only talking about those who physically cheat, and it is, but it brings. But I'm saying that, and as the disabled know, it brings a stigma on us when people cheat on disability with a blue badge or whatever.
Okay, I think Richard should say something first.
Thank you very much. Well, what I'd like to say is that Gloucester has swung between Labour and Conservatives since the Second World War, and we've got people on food banks here, not just people who are unemployed, which is bad enough, but people who are working on 0 hours contracts, and that's an absolute disgrace, I think. We're also going to spend, or the Tory government, or the former Tory government wants to spend, 60 billion, I think it is, on vanity projects like HS2, both the warmonger Tony Blair and the Conservatives, and to the credit of Jeremy's party, the Lib Dems, didn't vote for illegal foreign wars. I mean, imagine how much money's been spent on illegal... Sorry. Imagine how much money has been spent on illegal foreign wars by... we've got credible, costed solutions. We're not going to cut benefits of people who are in need, whether they're working or they're not working. We're not going to have 0 hours contracts. We're not going to have food banks in Gloucester. We are going to bring everybody out of minimum wage, out of taxation who's on a minimum wage. But I'm sorry if I'm getting a bit passionate, but I've just got Richard says not scale on that. So let's just have a look at his voting record, because Richard voted in favour of the over-bedroom tax, Richard, didn't you? And I've just lost the thing now, I'm afraid, on here. We voted in favour of... I'm really sorry, I've lost the thing here. Okay. There's a record here, Richard, of you voting against increasing benefits for people generally on their work for you. Now, that's not my figures, it's not scaremongering, it's actual fact from their work for you, or your record, because you've been whipped, as Sophie will be whipped, to vote on a line for the Conservative Party, or in Sophie's case, the Labour Party. If I'm elected as Gloucester's MP, I won't be whipped, I'll be able to vote on a case-by-case basis, representing the citizens of Gloucester. Thank you very much.
Okay, just a word to all our candidates, please. We have a unique opportunity today. We have people here who are very, very interested in asking you direct questions. Speechifying is not going to work today. It's not going to work with you coming here with prepared answers. When you give answers to very direct questions, please answer directly. Keep your answers short. This is a fantastic opportunity. Please can we give more opportunity to these people to ask questions and answer the question that has been asked of you and no more. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We move on to the second question, please. This from Jill Fuman. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Jill.
Hello. My name's Jill Freeman. I would like to talk about access to work. As you've heard, the government has been making major cuts to access to work, and it seems that the deaf are being put into a disadvantage. How can you support deaf people into work well? And access to work from you?
Okay, thank you very much. We'll start with Richard first, and we'll move back round again. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. I think the most important thing that any government should do is to encourage employers to employ people who've got disabilities, whether deaf, blind or any other. And that's why this programme, the Disability Confident Programme, is all about how to explain to employers what is special and what is needed for people with disabilities to get jobs. A lot of employers are nervous, probably more nervous than you or someone with disability trying to get the job. And so breaking down the barriers and them understanding better what you need and what your abilities are is half the battle. So that's why we're going around every constituency in the country with a Disability Confident event to get employers to sign up to absolutely equal opportunities for people, whatever their disability. We've got quite a few of the bigger employers in Gloucestershire signed up. The real challenge now is getting some of the smaller employers as well. So we will have another of these events, I hope, within 12 months. Thank you.
I've already spoken to some extent on this question. I think there has to be a lot more investment. There has to be more BSL training so that the possibility of workplace disability officers. I think the trade unions could do a lot more. We work closely. Most of our candidates are trade union activists. I think that we could ensure that in workplaces disability officers are elected so that people can be represented more adequately than they have been so far. And I think there has to be a lot more emphasis on employment opportunities in the public sector, and we are in favour of extending the public sector and taking back into public ownership those industries that have been privatised. And I see that as being a great area where work opportunities for everyone could be developed.
Okay, thank you.
Jill, thank you for your question, and I will give a direct answer to do with access to work. Firstly, there's the issue of the cap on the amount, and that is disproportionately affecting the deaf because of the cost of interpretation. Labour, because that won't come in until 2018, Labour will have a root and branch review before then to look at what we should do to make sure that that doesn't happen. And secondly, on access, the numbers of people using the Access to Work programme has fallen every year since this government came in, the last government, as they are. We will work with disability employment advisors in job centres to ensure that more people use the programme, because that's where we need to start.
Yes, perhaps I could just read from the note I made on the Green Manifesto, which simply says, and it's rather similar to what Richard Graham has already said, we need to raise the profile of access to work with employers, and especially, and it mentions this particularly as a scheme amongst smaller firms, and we need far greater transparency, I'm quoting again, over how the scheme is administered. Clearly it's a very good scheme, it just needs more publicity, people need to understand it better, employers need to implement it without fail. George?
Well, as you obviously know, I have found life with a disability very hard. It's an uphill battle. I did actually apply for a fire officer's job for the hospital, as it said, knowledge of the fire service and ability to drive. I didn't even get on the shortlist. However, as you know, I've spent the rest of my life helping other people. Life with a disability is an uphill battle, and you have to fight hard and sell yourself. GIS employs a lot of disabled people, but I believe around the country governments are cutting these, saying they can't afford it, then those people must go on benefit. I think they need to look at the correlation between being paid to work and pay tax, and then not working and being on benefit. All I can say, try hard, work hard, and don't give in. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's very important, George has mentioned it, and one of the other candidates just mentioned, that we don't want to be in a situation where people who want to work and have got a particular challenge in their lives are not able to work because of that. And I think the government, MPs and employers need to do everything they can to ensure that people who've got particular challenges are unable to get back to work. Access to work needs more support, clearly. It's not as well known as it should be. We need to stop any kind of discrimination in the workplace of whatever kind.
Slow down, I'm very sorry.
Sorry. So sorry, folks. Sorry. We need to counter any kind of discrimination within the workplace, and I think a system of offering tax credits or benefits to employers to encourage them to offer people with challenges in their lives would be good as well. Sorry, I'm going too fast again.
It's still good, slightly too fast.
Sorry.
We must put him on speed.
As Richard and Sophie are standing up, I thought I'd better do the same. Because I noticed some people said they found it easier to understand. It's really important that anybody with a disability has the same opportunity to work and to have a good job. And in actual fact, it's beneficial to the country and to that individual. It's also beneficial is that if they're earning, they might well be paying taxes and they won't be receiving benefits in order to support their lifestyle. And I think the Access to Work programme needs to be expanded. It needs more businesses to be aware of it. And I must compliment Richard for holding the disability seminar at Blackfriars, which I attended. I hear George's criticism of the venue, but it was a very good session, and there were some very good discussions. And there was a lot of businesses there that were prepared to take on people with disabilities. It's not just deaf people, but people with visual impairment or other physical impairment. So we need to do what we can, and I would have thought whoever's the MP for Gloucester for the next 5 years would want to start with a blank sheet and make sure that they've achieved an objective of getting a number of people with disabilities that aren't in work today, but in work tomorrow and in work at the next time, the general election. I think the MP's office can do a lot to help and a lot to persuade businesses as well to take on people which businesses might think are they need to take them on and realise that people with disabilities can offer a great deal to that company.
Thank you.
Can I just add one small factual thing which could be useful to some of you? The County Council has a person called Vicky Walters who runs an organisation called Forwards, and they specialise in helping people with disabilities into work, often working with Plus in Eastgate Street. Several of my constituents came to me for help, and through this route, quite a lot of them have been able to get jobs. There's a particularly inspiring story of a woman who was blind who got a job at Morrison's. It's a great story for another day. But if any of you live in Gloucester and do have problems, do come to my office for help. Thank you.
Or the next MP.
Okay. All the next MP's office. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy.
My office is still open.
Okay, Reg, at the back, would you like to give your next question, please?
Really, it's linked to that same question of access to work. Sorry to harp on about it. I mean, it's it's a very good stories you're telling us about helping disabled back into work, blind, etc. So that's good. But it's a sad fact that there's been a real breakdown in communication with access to work in the deaf community. You're saying that you want to encourage disabled and deaf into work. You're absolutely right. But I've worked here for 3 years, and I've noticed more and more deaf are having. I'm trying to help more and more deaf people on benefits back into work, but it's virtually impossible. Richard Graham said that he's trying to encourage confidence within disabled people in the deaf community. And I feel that really in real life there just isn't their confidence to go out and get a job because it's a brick wall they're meeting. You know, it's really important. They need to get access. They need to be able to access the jobs. But the access to work is cutting. You know, loads of people are getting out to becoming unemployed. You know, and our confidence, we're losing our confidence. We need more support for the community.
Okay. So the next, thank you, Virgil. Good comment. The next question, please. If we can have Kim Fletcher. Kim Fletcher? Is she here? Okay. Hello, Kim.
Hi everybody, my name's Kim Fletcher. I'd like to talk about health. Have you heard of the Sick of It report? It focuses on the effect of health on the deaf community. Early deaths, health problems, lack of information for the deaf community, and lack of access to GP surgery. I know that my experience, I had a doctor's appointment, and organised appointments, and then the whole system within my surgery changed to something called a triage system. Okay. And I thought, well, hang on a second. He said, better to phone up first. Well, as a deaf person, I can't phone. I can't make an appointment. I wasn't able to just pop in there and make an appointment. I had to use the triage system. So my health was suffering because of the first brick wall of having to use the phone to make an appointment. I said, well, I'm deaf. You know, I just wanted to text. And they said, well, no. They said, I said, well, what about, can I use email? And they said, no. I said, well, how on earth am I supposed to make my appointment? I went to see Jenny Hopkins at the GDA, and I discussed it with her. This was over a year ago, this issue. We both fought my Liverpool surgery. And it really is very difficult for all deaf members of the community to make appointments in this new system in the GP surgeries. But finally, we have achieved some breakthrough, but it really is early days at the moment. If I could just add one more thing, hospital appointments. I've asked them countless times, please don't call my name, come and see the medical professional there. Especially in audiology department, for goodness sake, surely they know. Surely they know the reason that we're there. The worst thing to do is to call us. Through my whole of my life, it's been the same system. They always call you. Why on earth they haven't got notice up there? I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. Carlos, on here, was there the question, really? I mean, the question I have here is what will your party do to make better access to deaf people in GP surgeries and hospitals? So if the candidates can follow that, please, I think that would be very good. So we'll start with yourselves.
Good points. Very good points.
Well, my replies are not very concrete, and that's partly because I don't expect to be elected, unfortunately. But I do take these issues very seriously. And I think one of the problems, and it affects the whole of society, is that people are not involved in decision making and they cannot actually influence what happens to them in their own lives. And I said at the beginning, politicians need to listen, but that also means respecting the views and the communities that are putting forward those ideas. I think it's, with respect to GP surgeries and the NHS, there's a big crisis. And again, it affects those that are least integrated, if you like, into the system. But it does affect everyone. At the eye department, incidentally, at Gloucester Hospital, they have the most horrendous lighting. So when I go there, I have to cover my eyes. So that, again, is an example of how there's not really what you call joined-up thinking. And that means that disabled people, or all communities, need to be more empowered. And unfortunately, power in this society is determined by money, really. And I don't think that there's enough advocacy, and I don't think there's enough emphasis on groups having the confidence to actually put forward their own issues. And I'm really inspired by the fact that this lady has said that she's doing that. But I think we have to tackle the NHS, we have to tackle GP funding, and how surgeries are run, and we have to have more input from patients and users of services. And that's the way we will change things, I think, through groups like your own, taking up the issue and being supported by others.
Thank you. Sophie.
Thank you, Kim, for that question. And it's a very good one. This is really, I have had a sick of it report, that was part of the question. And there are some very simple, straightforward suggestions in there that don't cost a lot of money, that are basically best practice. I've spent a lot of time working in aviation flight safety when I was in the Royal Air Force, and the way that you improve flight safety is by best practice. It is doable. I also have been at a surgery. I've moved quite a lot in my life. I have been at a surgery that does everything that is recommended in the report, and I'm at a surgery at the moment that does none of these things. So I accept that the service is not uniform, and I will, Kim, help fight that with you, because it's completely obvious what needs to be done. And you know, my last surgery but one, it was touch screens, everything was done visually and audibly, obviously, to help people with both visual and hearing impairments, and you can book your consultations on the internet or via email. And on the audiology department, I've got the phone number of the chief executive of the hospital on my phone, because I've met him, I know him. If I'm elected, could you remind me, and I will give him a ring and I will have a chat with him, because this doesn't seem to be beyond the wit of man.
Or woman.
Or woman.
Yeah. I've also read the report and actually was appalled by it. I had no idea that there were these problems, and it was an eye-opener as far as I was concerned, if that's the right expression. And so I was glad to have read it. I just want to say a couple of things about it. I would have thought that some sort of disability awareness training for all GPs. Perhaps they'd get it, I don't know. But something more in depth for all GPs and other medical staff would be part of the answer. Just to make them aware that this is a problem for people. And I'm sorry to say that there's nothing specific, to answer another part of the question, there's nothing specific in the Green Party manifesto about this issue, and I can only promise that I will use what influence I do have, both before and after the election, to make sure that the party understands that this is an issue and something which would need to do something about. Thank you.
Being disabled, I can understand some of your problems. Sophie's problem reminds me of the German tourist in Gloucester. I asked, is there anybody that speaks German? And this man came forward and in a very loud voice said, can you understand me? So I am amazed that I've tried to use email for the city council at the hospital myself, yet they keep sending letters out to my complaints or highlighting problems that I've had. This is a waste of paper, which I'm sure the Green Party will pick up on. And so they should. We were discussing this at the Disability Equality Forum 10 or even more years ago. So sadly nothing has happened. Now since the closure of the Disability Equality Forum and the Access Group by the City Council, I can only encourage you to keep on fighting, and I will carry on fighting for any injustices on the disability issues. Thank you. Oh, moment. On my own problem with the NHS is cost. I want to weigh myself because no disabled person in a wheelchair can get on a scale, and they can say you can only do it when you see a consultant. And I made a complaint, and they paid £360 a year to have a private firm come and weigh me. Now, that's what I want to stop. Waste and use common sense. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to apologise for speaking too quickly earlier, and there's not a regular room here for a big guy, so that's why I wasn't standing. But what I would like to say is endorse what George, speaking slowly, George has just said. It is all a question of common sense, isn't it? I mean, how stupid. And, you know, UKIP has got, it is about money, as Sue said. UKIP has got credible, costed means of how we are going to fund the NHS. We're going to have 20,000 more nurses, we're going to have 8,000 more GPs, we're going to extend opening hours into the evenings and the weekends. And, you know, I remember actually, because of my daughter's very slightly disabled, but the Disability Discrimination Act was introduced, I think, in 2005 from memory. And here we are now, 10 years later, and these things are still extant. How wrong is that? You know, UKIP believes in the people of this country, all the people of this country, regardless of ability, disability, their social or ethnic origin, and we will not allow that to happen. Thank you very much.
Can I thank you for the question and say that I have read the report. I note that my doctor is good at listening to me. 15% of deaf people say that's the case, and 51% of other people say that's the case. The doctor's receptionist is not helpful, and that's one of the problems that deaf people suffer from. 40% of them say that's the case when they visit the doctor's surgery, and 8% of ordinary people say that. That's the wrong word to say, but people are not deaf. Can I say that as far as the issue to do with being called when you go to the audiology, I've been diagnosed with tinnitus in the last year, and when I was in that department over at Cheltenham Royal, Cheltenham Hospital anyway, that I noticed the fact that people were called by name, and I suppose that quite a number of people that are there aren't profoundly deaf, but others are profoundly deaf, and it seems to me that they really do need to get that right. One of the things that's just happened is the Gloucestershire GP's commissioning group has just been awarded with £4 million to improve access. And that might well be opening hours, but it might also be issues to do with more access via the internet and ways of communicating with your doctor online, so that you can get a diagnosis or get a prescription update. I think we do need to make sure that, and we ought to be telling GP commissioning groups, that we need to make sure that doctor surgeries do use some of that money that they've just been awarded to improve access for people with hearing problems.
Okay, a lot of answers, Kim, to two very simple questions. Your first question is about GPs texting you, not ringing you for appointments. And the role of an MP, a lot of the time, has nothing to do with politics, but about trying to get small practical changes that affect people's lives. So the answer to that one is for the MP, and I'm happy to set that ball in motion later this afternoon, to go to the clinical commissioners and ask them what the standard is for all GP practices in the city. Do they have a standard requirement to text people who have registered that they are deaf? And the second point about the audiology department of the hospital is much the same thing. This is about the MP getting in contact with Frank Harsent at the hospital and asking him what the requirement of the audiology department is, and explaining to them that we have had a complaint from someone who is deaf. That is about half of the sort of casework issues that I get on an everyday basis. It's not to do with money, it's not to do with politics, it's about small practical changes. That's why you should email your MP whenever these problems come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I'm very mindful of the time, so I'd like to move for another question. I'm sure we can get one in.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name's Helen Zidner. There's two issues I'd like to bring up. The first one is what we call the bedroom tax. My mother told me recently, she heard on the radio, that we plan to scrap the bedroom tax. I mean, I myself am responsible for her paying an additional amount for the extra bedroom. I totally disagree with it. I do agree with it. I struggle to pay it. Okay, and my second point is that those that come to the board who need accommodation seem to jump up the housing waiting list very, very quickly. And I feel that those that have been long-term residents in this country just get pushed to the bottom of the list again, and it's a great concern to me. I feel that we need to have a fair society, and that people who have been waiting long years need to get the accommodation, not those that have just recently come to this country.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. Very good question.
Helen, I've been asked to keep this brief by the adjudicator. With the housing list, I have been assured by the City Council that there is no preference for immigrants over anybody else. But when, if or when, if you choose me as your MP, I will go back and look into this again, because people do raise it with me. On the bedroom tax, the sad thing is, people have said this to me in the food bank as well, that they've heard it will be scrapped. Sadly, it will only be scrapped if we get a Labour government, I'm afraid. The Conservatives will not be scrapping it. Now, it's a cruel and wrong tax, and I deal with people who are hit by it. There are no smaller places for people to move to. This city doesn't have enough housing to do that. So the thing that motivates me, amongst many others, to try and get elected, I've got 21 days, is the first vote the Labour Party will have will be to scrap the bedroom tax. And I will be so proud to have that as my first vote as an MP in this city, I can tell you that for sure.
We need a generous government. instead of one of the opposite of generous is, so whoever is elected, we need right away, as Sophia said, we need to get rid of the bedroom tax, which is a mean and ungenerous measure. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that we need to be generous to our immigrant community as well. And unless there is actual evidence that they are being unfairly given advantages, and I don't think there is, then we need to treat them as we would like ourselves to be treated.
Yes, Reg? Sorry. Keep it.
Sorry, can we move on because we're waiting to do some more.
Well, every candidate needs to have a chance to answer this question, I'm afraid. So we're going to try and get through them quickly, then. Okay, that's what we have to do.
But that's not really a deaf-related question, though.
I still think you've got to. I really feel you've got to give everyone in. Yes, we'll ask the other candidates to keep it tight, but at the end of the day, we only have so much time. So we're keeping it very brief, but everyone should have the opportunity, the same opportunity to answer that question, unfortunately.
Just say yes or no.
Well, no, you had a good say, Sophie. I think that's fair.
It's the same sheep.
Yeah. Okay, but sorry. So we'd like to keep it going, but we're moving along. But sorry, Sophie, it's unfair. Okay, good. Sorry, keep going.
I think the bedroom tax is unfair, especially when I've heard they need the extra room for dialysis equipment on immigrants. If someone has a job and comes here, I think that's fair. They usually have somewhere to stay at the time. I'd like to know what happens with all the illegal immigrants that seem to come in on the backs of lorries and then they're here, so they've got to be put up somewhere. And I'd ask our next, if it's not me, our next MP to look into this.
Well, I've got to say yes or no, can I say? Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry, the bedroom tax is a pernicious attack on ordinary people, and Richard Graham voted for it. It's a matter of record. And it isn't just Labour that will scrap it. UKIP is also against it. We don't just, if Labour come to power, they've already bust the country once. We'll have an SNP Labour coalition with Ed Miliband in Nicola Sturgeon's pocket. So please don't fall for that line. You have a choice other than the bedroom tax Tories or Labour that's going to bust the country again without such regulation of the bankers. Thank you.
We're just going to let Sophie come back on that one line.
Can I come back on?
One thing, there will be no Labour SNP coalition. We have promised that.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll be quite quick. There isn't anything such as a bedroom tax. There is no tax on people having bedrooms. What there is a reduction in a housing benefit if you have additional bedrooms in your property that you're renting that you don't need. Labour introduced that if you have a private landlord, and it was introduced for social landlords and council houses by this government. The system is unfair in the way it deals with people with disabilities, and the Liberal Democrats will reform the spare room subsidy to allow people with disabilities and something like with dialysis or anything that they need it for a carer or for equipment because they need it for themselves. Also, we will not impose the spare room subsidy discount on people that have been unable to move. In other words, if they've been asked to reduce to a smaller property where they only need 2 bedrooms, they've got one that's 3, they won't be having their housing benefit reduced unless, of course, they can find additional accommodation. So let's make it quite clear. It's about making sure that we have the right sort of accommodation for people's needs. We also got to remember there's a lot of families on the housing waiting list, and it is wrong that the social housing, which might have 3 or 4 bedrooms, is being held by somebody who only needs 1 bedroom, and that's part of the problem that we have.
Yes, I voted in favour of this change because We have 20,000 tenants in the private sector in Gloucester who already had this change before, introduced by the Labour government. We've now done it for people in Gloucester City homes as well. It affects about 500 households. People who need full-time carers or who are in the armed forces or who are pensioners are not affected. And for those who are affected but who suffer from it, there is a fund in the City Council which you can apply to for special help, and I have helped people successfully do that. I'm afraid this is all about fairness. If you have the same rule for 20,000 people, you must have it for those who are living in the social housing as well. But as Jeremy says, it's not a tax. Thank you.
I was just going to say I'm against the benefit tax. I'm sorry, I'm going to say a little bit more than that, but not too long. The council in Gloucester and in Stroud gave back some of that, half of that funding. It was not distributed, and yet I know people who received help, but it was only for a limited period, which is no real help at all. 70% of the people affected by the bedroom tax are disabled. And I think it's wrong.
Just repeat that figure.
70% of the people.
That is not true.
That is a figure which I've seen from various sources. 70% of the people affected by bedroom tax, perhaps not in Gloucester, but nationally, are disabled. And anyone who knows somebody affected by this tax knows what it has done to their lives. People are absolutely distraught, and I think it has to be stopped.
I think we really need to move on. I'm very sorry. But, right, we really should be wrapping up, but we want one more question if the candidates are okay with that. Sorry, could we?
Thank you. This is great. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to ask this question about deaf children. I'm really worried about deaf children and their futures. Beaufort School is closing. The national average for GCSE success rates for deaf children is half compared to hearing children. And the future for deaf children is very grim. I know that Rosemary, who works for the youth club, she works very hard, very hard running the youth club. There's very few deaf children here in Gloucester, in Gloucester that access the youth clubs. We've had, in the last 20 years, we've had such chronic cuts in deaf education. We need to find a remedy for it.
Okay, right, we'll see. First of all, we'll pass it on to Jonathan, and if we can give your answers briefly.
Just to say what I've said, that we need a generous government, we need money put back so that the cuts are reversed, and there is generous provision for deaf schooling in this city and indeed in this county. I don't think I need to say more. I think we'd all agree about that.
George, keep it tight, please.
I've only just heard that Beaufort School is closing, which I find strange, as I heard on a news report that the numbers are increasing for children.
It's the deaf provision that's closing.
Well, this is very bad then. I believe sign language should be taught in schools. In fact, I've given several talks in schools on disability, life before and after disability, and if you can catch teenagers, especially obviously the hearing teenagers, to start thinking they're not the only ones in the world, they may be able to put something back into the world. Unfortunately, they say, curriculum time, we've got to teach them this and that. But if they teach them about society, I think that would be a lot better, because when I was growing up, you didn't know, you were told to keep away from disabled people. Now, of course, I'm hoping to expand and say, look, I'm a disabled person, I'm real, I want to enjoy life, I'm selfish, I want to enjoy life like you. Thank you.
Well, I just say we've got money for foreign wars, we've got money for HS2, but we haven't got money for deaf kids to sorry.
Go on, Pat, you are, please.
We have money for other things, for foreign wars, HS2. We don't have money to educate deaf children. It's an absolute disgrace, and it's a shame on both Labour and Conservative. We saw this very spat that happened, each blaming the other. That's why you need to get rid of them and you change in Gloucester. Thank you.
When I was a teenager, I went to a school where we had a deaf unit there. That was Long Level Secondary School. And it was really good, I think, in the way that it helped children with hearing disabilities to mix with everybody else and for us to understand their problems as well. And I'm not too au fait with what's happening at Beaufort School from the question. I do need to check it out. But I do think it's important that we do provide education for children, whatever their disabilities and their difficulties. This coalition government has established the pupil premium and the policy, and that's putting £1,300 per child from some disadvantaged family into each school. I know like Kingsland School in the area that I represent, that's well over £200,000 a year additional money that's coming in. I think maybe the rules on the pupil premium ought to be altered, and the County Council again we talked about providing it for carers and young kids who might be caring for an elderly person in the family or somebody with a disability, and it affects their education. I think maybe we need to consider whether this ought to be, pupil premium ought to be given for those children with hearing problems as well. I don't think it is in their manifesto. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's something that I would support as the MP for Gloucester.
Okay, Reg, Beaufort School is not closing. This is about the teaching for deaf. Beaufort is now a cooperative academy, so the issue is really all about the funding and the commitment of the sponsor as to whether they want to keep it going. And I think if there is enough demand and enough strength of feeling, then this is something that the Gloucestershire Deaf Association could work very closely with the city's next MP on. Thank you.
It does come down to money, and academies are not part of the old system of education provision. And I personally think that it's important that MPs represent their communities, but I also think that communities should also take action on this. I have to confess that probably like a lot of people, I was not aware of the specifics affecting deaf people. I'm really glad. I read the Sick of It report only the other day. I'd not heard of it before. I'm in the Socialist Party, which has a disabilities and carers group within it, although we don't have a huge membership. I think that it is important that the people here take this issue up, and I will take it up. I have campaigned actively locally, and I think that's one of the most important things, that people are enabled and feel enabled to take things into their own hands and to protest and organise, and not just rely on politicians or on funding that's handed down. You have rights. You have a right to education. You should have a right to education. I believe it's in the UN Charter, the right to education, and yet deaf people seem to be coming at the bottom of that ladder all the time.
Thanks for that question. It is a real shame what's happening with the deaf provision at Beaufort. I've heard such good things about what has been done in the past, and I will ask more questions if I'm elected about it. 2 points. One is the fragmentation of our school system at the moment is not helping us ensure that we get good provision across our schools with free schools, academisation, and all the other varieties. We'll have a Director of School Services to oversee this. and I will speak with that director if I'm elected about the deaf provision. And finally, I'd just like to say something on unqualified teachers. There's been a 16% rise in them, and therefore they don't necessarily receive any training in this area, and we will get rid of unqualified teachers in our educational system so that we get the right sort of teaching going on in our schools.
Okay, unfortunately we've run out of time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you ever so much. If you don't mind, I'd like you to put your hands together and give all the candidates a clap for coming over today. Hopefully someone will stand behind for a cup of coffee and answer a few more questions. I would also just like to say I have been very fortunate to work with the Gloucestershire Deaf Association here, and I must admit that it is an outstanding facility, outstanding and passionate people that work here, and I would just like, if you don't mind, put your hands together for them as well. Finally, just two last things, please. I'd like to thank the interpreters who have done an absolutely amazing job. I might have a word with Richard afterwards.
I'd like to apologise. I'd like to apologise for speaking
and most importantly of all, please, this is a very, very interesting election, and my grandparents fought in the wars and all the rest of it. We have a democratic right to vote that we are all very, very fortunate to have. So please, whatever your political persuasion, please go out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Sorry, just one question from
Can I ask just one quick question? There hasn't been an opportunity to ask a question that really affects the hard of hearing community. One, I know of one that was submitted. Would it be possible to get a private answer from the candidates here to that question that was submitted, please?
Sure.
Sure. I've already got a minute. We could
send it to all of us so we're sure which one it is.
Can I just add, what I want to do, I appreciate we haven't had a chance to answer every question today. If it's okay with the candidates, maybe I can liaise with you and we can get some bullet points on the points we have discussed and also fill in the gaps that we have missed as well, and I can distribute that amongst our clients in due course. Is that all right if I work with you to do that? And then we can fill in those questions as well for you. Okay.
Thank you. And one final thing, I am the chairman of the Federation of Small Business, by the way, here in Gloucester and in the southwest of England. And if I can ever help any of you running your business or in any way, please just give me a call. Thank you very much.